Welcome to another week, another show of Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Pleased to be joining you, and thanks for tuning in. Also, thanks for making us number one in late night at Fox 28 KFXA. They want to thank you. I want to thank you. We're having a lot of fun here, and glad you are as well. Got another good show lined up for you this week, and I know you'll think so after viewing it. Got Joe Mershman joining me here in just a moment with the Mershman Minute, followed up by David Eicholt with our Hawkeye Insider moments. And David's got a lot of great information as always, so can't wait to talk to him. And then, of course, our usual lineup with James Vandenberg, the former Hawkeye quarterback, and then Jeff Horner, former Hawkeye basketball playing great. They'll be joining us to close out the show. So another show ready for you. And as I say that to you, I've located my friend Joe Mershman, as you can see him next to me on the screen here. First and foremost, as always, Joe, thanks for joining me. And secondly, the Super Bowl. I don't want to sit here and crow about being right, but you picked the Chiefs. I had the Buccaneers. Can't wait to talk to James Vandenberg about that. We had opposite picks like you and me. What are your thoughts?
Don't count the old guys out. I guess that's the moral of the story.
That's right. Tom Brady, the old guy, and Patrick Mahomes, the young guy. But Tristan Wirfs in that offensive line with the Buccaneers, what a job they did. Obviously, the Tampa Bay defense with Anthony Nelson, but Anthony Hitchens made a nice play, former Hawkeye linebacker, playing for the Chiefs, broke up a pass in the end zone. Nice play by him. Ben Niemann, former Hawkeye and now current Chief, had a couple of nice tackles. So all four of our Hawkeyes were well represented and played well in the Super Bowl, Joe.
I totally agree. I was real proud of them.
Yeah, as well you should be. So, Joe, we have much to discuss upcoming. The spring is a late winter going into spring for you guys is very busy with farming and in the seed industry. Can't wait to catch up with you more down the road and talk about that. But for right now, one for me and nothing for you. So we got 1-0. Can't wait for next year's Super Bowl, my friend.
Just wait till we get a seed question. I'll bet I'll get that one right over you.
I'm counting on it. Thanks, Joe. Catch up with you next week.
So long.
And I've located David Eicholt, as you can see on the screen next to me here. David, Hawkeye Insider. You see all his information at the bottom of the screen. As always, I want to get to it right away with David. We've got much to cover in a short period of time. So first and foremost, as always, David, thanks for joining us here at Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. And secondly, and most importantly, as you and I talked about last week, Hawks need to win at least 2 or 3. They won 1 out of 3. They beat Michigan State, lose to Ohio State, and lose to Indiana. You had a press availability today as we record this on Tuesday afternoon. You got to talk to Fran and the players, and then also I want you to lead us into the next 3 games in 8 days. Tomorrow night will be Rutgers, hopefully a home win for the Hawkeyes, and then on the road to Michigan State for a rematch, and the first game of 2 against Wisconsin at Wisconsin. So I'm going to step out of the way. Thanks again, and go.
Yeah, I think a couple of things to keep in mind, Dave. Number one, C.J. Frederick is supposed to play on Wednesday. I think people are really starting to realize how important he is to this team. I think Iowa's team right now, Dave, is so perfectly constructed to make a run in March Madness, but they cannot miss any of the pieces. Jordan Bohannon can't be hurt. C.J. Frederick can't be hurt. Obviously, they need Luka Garza to be Luka Garza. They need Joe Wieskamp to be aggressive. So, if CJ comes back at anywhere near 100%, I think that's going to make a huge difference. He's one of the best shooters in the Big Ten, probably Iowa's best perimeter defender, certainly among the starting lineups. So if he goes on Wednesday, which Frank McCaffrey says he's planning to, I think that's a very good sign. Iowa is 12-2 with CJ Frederick in the lineup this year, and they're 0-4 when not. And like I said, being a late game execution guy, I really do think that he's going to make a huge difference, especially coming down the stretch. And I would caution people, Dave, not to really overreact or try to not freak out about anything, because let's be real. We've kind of said this all year, Dave. If Iowa ends the season on a 4 or 5 game win streak going into March in the tournament, everybody's going to pick them the Final Four. It's all about momentum and when you get hot. And Iowa still has the pieces to make a run, I think.
Yeah, well stated. And you had a press availability with Fran McCaffrey today and the players as we record this on Tuesday afternoon before the Wednesday Rutgers game. The viewers, of course, will know that result when they see this show on Friday night. But you and I have talked about this, David. Fran getting some heat from the media, from the local fans, and from fans. But, David, the lack of rebounding, lack of defense, those are a couple of things. But it's the late game lack of execution. And this team having leads with veteran leadership and great offensive abilities ahead by 11 points with under 5 minutes and they're losing games. David, that's a trend that's got to stop. And I know CJ is a big part of that, but did Fran address that at all, or any of his players talk about that with late games lead, not being able to hold and close out?
I mean, ultimately, Dave, you know as well as I do, and they said they just need to get stops. I think that's the biggest thing. You look at what happened against Ohio State. Ohio State scored on 17 of the final 22 possessions. I thought Iowa's defense took a step forward on Sunday against Indiana, but Indiana converted on their last 3 possessions, including Armand Franklin's step-back jumper, which ultimately proved to win the game for the Hoosiers. So I think there's some positive things there. Iowa's offensive execution at that time didn't really click the way it has in previous years. But again, Iowa's team still has guys that can step up. Jordan Bohannon's one of the most clutch players in school history. They have Luka Garza. They have Joe Wieskamp. They have guys who have stepped up in big moments. They just have not been able to do that much this year. And I think once they get a couple games under their belt, and if they can regain that, again, I think that that's going to play have a tremendous impact for the rest of the season. They have the talent to do it. The question is, and are they mentally tough enough to be able to pull it off?
Yeah, and consistency. You got to do it consistently down the stretch. David, got about a minute and a half left with you here. Give us some takeaways that you see going into the next 3 games in 8 days. Again, Rutgers, Michigan State, Wisconsin. Rutgers at home at Carver Hawkeye, and Michigan State and a rematch from a couple of weeks ago. The Hawks won going to East Lansing, and then, of course, game 1 of 2 late in the year here against Wisconsin at Wisconsin.
I think number one, Dave, play more man defense. I think Frank McCaffrey's zone specifically has just been kind of beaten down and broken apart by several teams. It seems like whenever they switch to zone, teams are getting open corner 3-pointers. Iowa did better against Indiana because they were playing in man. And Luka Garza has kind of been a better rim protector this year. And I think Jack Nunge has kind of emerged as a guy who can block some shots and can alter a lot of shots. You'd rather have contested 2s than open 3-pointers, Dave, especially from the corner, which is the second most efficient shot in basketball next to the wide open layup. So that's what I'd be screaming to the heavens about takeaways. Iowa's got to play more man defense, and they got to execute late game.
I love the way you state that, and accurately so. I'll say this in the last 15, 20 seconds. Hawks didn't drop much. They dropped from 8 in the AP down to 15, losing 2 of those 3. So still getting national respect. It's not too late in the season. Middle of the pack, 5th and 6th, depending on when games are played and when you're watching this. But the Hawks in the middle of the pack in the Big Ten. Michigan going to be missing a handful of games. So the Hawks just got to worry about the Hawks business moving forward.
No, agreed 100%, Dave. And I think, again, Iowa right now is a 3rd or 4th seed. They still have all the opportunity in the world to move up with several quad 1 games to close out the season.
Well stated as always. Dave, thanks so much. Look forward to catching up with you next week, my friend.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it. Take care.
You're very welcome, and thank you, David Eichholt, the Hawkeye Insider. Back with more to close out the show with James Vandenberg, former Hawkeye quarterback, and then Jeff Horner, former Hawkeye basketball playing great. Back with more Hawkeye with me in just a few moments.
One word means more to farmers than any other: yield. Nobody knows this better than your friend in the field, Mershman Seeds. With industry-leading seed treatments like Tripidity ST, you'll see faster emergence and more bushels per acre. Become a part of the Mershman family and see the difference in your field. Ask your dealer for superiority, Mershman Seeds.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara, and always pleased to have this guy join us. As you see him on the screen here, he's James Vandenberg, the former Iowa Hawkeye quarterback, now with RBC Wealth Management, CorridorInvestmentGroup.com. He and Bill Happel Jr. do a great job of handling finances. Got the quarterback and the wide receiver. First and foremost, as always, James, thanks for joining us. And secondly, I'm going to start off with you this way this week with a huge crow. You're eating some crow today. You asked me last week, you're like, I don't really want to pick a Super Bowl winner. You do it for me, Dave. And I said, okay, I'm going Buccaneers. And immediately you just didn't even pause. I'm going Chiefs. Well, James, as the great Jim Carrey said in Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, man, am I tired of being right all the time. I got that one. How can you go against Tom Brady? I got to ask.
Oh, okay. Well, I wasn't going against Tom Brady. I was going against you. The Hawkeyes weren't on board. We got 2 Hawkeyes on each team, so it's irrelevant. So I was just going to pick the other side of the coin from you. What would the fun be if I picked the Bucks?
Exactly. You wanted to be a contrarian, but I can still do this. One for me over you. I got one on a former Hawkeye quarterback, but it was fun. Though, I got to tell you, James, in talking to you on and off the air, and we brought in Joe Mershman in our predictions and everybody else, Jeff Horner. But it was fun for the fact, like you said, it was hard to have a tiebreaker because you had 2 former Hawkeyes as Chiefs in Ben Niemann and Anthony Hitchens, and 2 former Hawkeyes with the Buccaneers in Tristan Wirfs and Anthony Nelson. So now, Hitchens had a big play, pass breakup in the end zone with a tackle-eligible play. That was cool. Niemann had a couple of nice tackles. But I tell you, and Anthony Nelson looked good on defense a few times and put some pressure on Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs on defense for the Buccaneers. But Yes, the Bucs defense played great, James, and pressured Mahomes, but you got to give it to that Tampa Bay offensive line and Tristan Wirfs. Leonard Fournette and Jones were able to run. They were running downhill the whole game, James.
Yeah, no, the Bucs dominated the majority of that game in almost all the phases. They had a good game plan. I mean, as we said off air, I think the Chiefs not having their tackles, I mean, having a lineman shuffle going into the Super Bowl is not ideal. Not that that's going to be an excuse they'll use, but I know how that goes, and there's definitely some nuances there. But no, the Buccaneers deserve hats off. I read something on Tristan Wirfs that basically said he hadn't given up a penalty since the 5th game this year or something. I mean, the guy's playing an incredible rookie or not, and he really is only a rookie. So pretty cool for those guys.
Yeah, and the interesting thing to that, your point there, James, is that they grade out players at each position. And Wirfs was at like 91.7%. He graded out either the highest or at or near the top of the highest of all the players in the games at his position, almost a 92% grade out. Not too shabby, as you mentioned, for a rookie. And in the biggest game of all time, a year ago, he's playing, with the Hawkeyes, and now he's playing in the biggest game of each year. Only 54 previous games, 55 total Super Bowls. Tristan Wirfs chooses to have one of his biggest and best games when the lights are the brightest.
Yeah, no, and I think it goes back. We talked about him a couple weeks ago. I think he probably is just going to keep getting better and better and better. He's so physically gifted that every rep he gets is going to make him better, and he's got the right mindset. So I have a feeling we're going to continue to see his trajectory just keep going up.
Yeah, and especially you get the acclaim and the fame of protecting Tom Brady. And unfortunately, the only time you're going to get your name mentioned is if you get a holding penalty or Brady gets sacked on your side. But in this case, he and his offensive line mates are getting some great attention, and deservedly so. But I'll mention this to you, and you said this off the air, and I want you to bring this on the air for the viewers as well. When you talk about Patrick Mahomes and being chased around all game, and they weren't using it as an excuse, but the flux and the problems they've had in the offensive line with injuries and illness and that type of thing with the Chiefs. And Mahomes, as we record this on Tuesday afternoon, Patrick Mahomes is getting his turf toe operated on today, although he moved around well in the game. Man, some of the passing angles he had to make and the throws he had to make, as a quarterback, when you're running for your life, you don't want that to happen, especially in a Super Bowl.
Every QB becomes human when you get pressure. You just do. There's a reason defenses talk about getting people off their spot. When you're in rhythm and you're in the spot and the ball comes out on time, it just clicks better. He never had that in that game. Yeah. It seemed like even when he kind of had a shred of time, it was like as soon as he let go of the ball, there's a hand. I mean, changing a throwing window. It just give a lot of credit to the Bucs defense. I mean, they had a good game plan in general, but from personal experience, just having played the position and just having watched a lot of quarterbacks, the great equalizer for quarterbacks is pressure. And I thought he hung in there, and I thought he even made some throws that could have been caught. He could have been bailed out, but the Chiefs just as a team didn't play that good. There was that series where they had a drop pass, then a long punt that got called back, and then they shank the punt, then they pick it off, but it's a penalty. Then they hold him to 4th down. They kick a field goal, but then there's another penalty, and then Brady throws a touchdown. And it's just like, okay, you're not going to beat Tom Brady when you have that sequence of 10 plays. And that's just kind of how the game went.
Yeah, they let way too many opportunities slip by, and as you mentioned, key opportunities. And a few times when the Chiefs got close, they're used to getting 3rd down conversions. They didn't, so they settled for 3 field goals. But, it's interesting, and 2 in the first half, but it's interesting that 31-9 victory over the Buccaneers, over the Chiefs, as you and I have discussed. It is great to see, and we'll see other Hawkeyes hopefully getting in the NFL this next year in 2021 going into the draft. But I want to mention to you before I say our goodbyes for this week, I can't begin to say thank you enough, James, for the 15 straight weeks you've joined me, almost 4 full months. Does it seem that long? It went quick. Because, initially we were going to do 8-10 weeks during the football season, and this has really morphed into, I've really enjoyed the conversations, getting great viewer feedback about you as to what you're up to today and what your playing career was at Iowa, and it's been really great for me and the viewers, but I hope it's been enjoyable for you as well.
Yeah, you forced me to become not only a college analyst, but now a pro analyst. Like, I'm just... My commentating career is on a high trajectory like Wirfs, but no, I've enjoyed it. 15. I was going to guess like 9, but
Good to hear.
I've enjoyed it, and I'm glad to be a part of this.
Yeah, and I'm glad to hear you said 9 instead of 15 instead of, it seemed like 30. But what I'm alluding to is you and I have talked to off the air, and I want the viewers to know that Ike Budker is going to join us next week. And then throughout the weeks, the Buffalo Bill now, current offensive lineman, but formerly of the Hawkeyes in Cedar Falls, Iowa. But Ike is going to bring a lot of his friends on in the offseason here, as well as a guy you know very well, Rick Stanzi, who helps train Ike in the offseason, and a former Hawkeye quarterback, but also Josie Jewell from my home area. Josie from Decorah, but I'm from the Postville, Castelia area. But then also we'll have Parker Hesse from Walk On, again in my neighboring area of Northeast Iowa. So a lot of former Hawkeyes going to be upcoming with Ike. But James, as I mentioned to you off the air, and I want the viewers to know, you're still going to join me off and on during the offseason here as we catch up with former Hawkeyes. Going to have the some Major League Baseball players that are from around the Cedar Rapids and Iowa area that either played at Iowa or are from Iowa. Got a lot of basketball players, former Hawkeyes to catch up with as well. But then next football season, so besides you joining me sporadically in the offseason, definitely can't wait to have you back on the regular once we get back to camp, and then in August with the Hawks getting ready to kick off, and then we'll have you back all through the regular season again next year. Can't wait for it, my friend.
Hey, that sounds good, Dave. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, thank you, and as am I and the viewers. So, James, thank you so much again, and we'll look forward to catching up with you down the road very soon.
Hey, you as well, Dave. Have a great day.
I will, and you as well. He is James Vandenberg, the former Hawkeye quarterback. Again, you can see his information at the bottom of the screen with CorridorInvestmentGroup.com or RBC Wealth Management. For James Vandenberg, the former Iowa Hawkeye quarterback, I'm Dave O'Hara. We'll be back with more to close out the show with our buddy Jeff Horner, former Iowa Hawkeye basketball playing great. Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara, back in just a few moments.
Farming makes a positive difference in my life. I love to take care of the yards and the flowers in the garden, but I also like the opportunity that I have now that I can get in the combine and help when they need that. During the fall, one of the main things that I take care of is hauling grain to the elevator or hauling it here onto the farm and getting it in the bins. Women in general just have more opportunities that they can show their strengths today on the farm.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara, and as you can see on the screen next to me, always pleased to have this guy join us. He's Jeff Horner, former Iowa Hawkeye basketball playing great, still number one in all-time assists at the University of Iowa, but Jordan Bohannon creeping closer and closer, as Jeff and I have talked about before, and Jeff still at or near the top of most meaningful offensive statistical categories at the University of Iowa. Current head coach into year 3 for the Truman State University Bulldogs, the men's basketball team there out of Kirksville, Missouri. Jeff starting and playing a lot of Iowans and still recruits heavily in Iowa, even though they're a Missouri school. But I got to mention this, Jeff, first and foremost, as always, thanks for joining us. But secondly, right out of the box here, congratulations. You 2 big victories last week after having 4 games off, postponed because of the test positive in your program for the last couple of weeks, but you come back right away on Thursday and Saturday with 2 big victories. You're up to number 6 now in the National Division II polls, up from number 7. First of all, again, thanks for joining us, and secondly, congratulations on the move up the charts.
Thanks for having me. So, yeah, I mean, obviously moved up to number 6. I think we're one spot up from last week, and I was just, happy that we were able to escape last week with 2 victories after being out for 14 days and only having 1 practice before we played a game. So, it was just kind of speaks volumes of the type of kids that we have.
Yeah, you and I talked about this last week, and if you don't mind going into a little bit of detail about what a team faces at this level, Division II, Division I. We see this with Iowa now, going to be playing like last week with the tough losses, University of Iowa men, and then, of course, this week, we're recording this on Tuesday afternoon as always, but they play tomorrow night, and so by the time this show airs, the viewers will know already the result of the Iowa-Rutgers game. It's a rematch from when the Hawks won on January 2nd. Out in New Jersey. They won 77-75. Rutgers starting to play well again. But with a glut of games that you're facing, and again, you'll have 2 more this week, and for the next 2 weeks, you're going to be on the road for 4 straight games. So I got to ask you directly, how do you get your team ready like that with only 1 practice? Is it a lot of working out on their own, the mental prep? I mean, when you're forced to sit out these games, and then boom, now you're going to play, 4 games in a short period of time. What's that mental process like and the coaching process for you and your staff?
Yeah, what happened with us is a lot of guys actually went home to quarantine just so they could get away from each other. So that way, if someone got it, they wouldn't put anyone else in, quarantine for even longer than what they already were. And then it ended up being that a couple of our other guys did get it, and shockingly enough, the guys who did get it got out of quarantine before the guys that didn't have it, which is, doesn't make a lot of sense to me, I guess you could say. But anyways, it's one of those things where, those guys that did get back early, we were able to work them out, and we got about, 3 or 4 days of doing individual workouts and being able to get them back into shape. And obviously it was a real struggle for them, the first 1 or 2 days, that type of thing. But we were able to get a lot of work in with those guys. And luckily, 3 of those guys were starters. And so, we were able to use that, but then a couple more guys were key bench players that maybe hadn't played, a whole lot this year. And so we were able to get them back in pretty good shape with a couple days. But, then our whole team came back on Wednesday. And like I said, we were able to get through, tried not to do too much. We went over the scout. We did a couple up and down things. We actually ended up going a little bit more live than what I wanted to. I kind of asked the players, I said, do you want to keep going live? And, they thought it was a good idea. And I was actually playing on the scout team at that time because we didn't have enough guys back. So
I was going to ask you what that felt like to get back in action for yourself.
Yeah, well, I'm not quite in the shape that I used to be, but I did hit a 3 to end practice, and I caught it after that. So we were good after that. But like I said, our guys are mentally tough. I know they were doing things, on their own, trying to run outside, just push-ups, sit-ups, those types of things. And we came back that Wednesday night. We did quite a bit of shooting, and like I said, it wasn't pretty, but we were able to pull out 2 wins, and that just, like I said, speaks volumes of our guys.
Yeah, it really does. Well, best of luck moving forward, and we'll catch up with you each week on that. And 2 this upcoming weekend, or Thursday, Saturday, and then 2 the following. So busy making it up. But let's get back to the Hawkeyes here, if you don't mind, and we got to talk about this. Boy, I'll tell you, Jeff, last Tuesday when we recorded, Hawks won a big game last Tuesday night against Michigan State. But then Thursday night, while you were playing your game, you got to see some of that Iowa-Ohio State game later on video. But that was a tough one against a tough team, number 7 against number 8. The Hawks lose. And then, of course, on Sunday, national TV leading up into the Super Bowl, Sunday morning into early Sunday afternoon a couple days ago, Hawks lose a tough one, last-second shot by Indiana. They lose a heartbreaker, so now they've lost 2 of the last 3. This week is no easier. Again, as we record this on Tuesday afternoon, tomorrow night, the Hawks will play Rutgers at home, as I mentioned, a rematch against their victory a month ago or so against Rutgers 77-75 in Jersey. But then I'll tell you, and more tough games await. They go to Michigan State for a rematch of a game they won earlier a couple weeks ago by 6 points at Carver Hawkeye. And then they stay on the road and go to Wisconsin. And again, that game will be, we'll give you the results of those games afterwards. So as we record this on Tuesday, the Hawks play tomorrow night at Wednesday. You'll know the results when you see this show on Friday night, and then next week we'll lead into Saturday and Thursday's games against Michigan State and Wisconsin. But what are your thoughts about 2 of those last 3 losses, beating Michigan State, but then losing to Ohio State and Indiana, and then the upcoming schedule, boom, right back at it again?
Yeah, obviously, I think not having CJ Frederick, I think, I don't know if people really appreciate, what he does for this team as far as toughness. I think he's their best perimeter defender as well. And obviously, he's a very good, 3-point shooter too. So just missing those types of things for them, I think he tried to give it a go in the Michigan State game, if I'm not correct. And just obviously wasn't himself. And then, missed the next 2 games. But, he's got to get healthy. I have a worry. It's probably, something with his foot from last year. That's still giving him some problems would be my guess. But, those things are tricky. I broke my foot 3 times, my 5th metatarsal, and then my 4th metatarsal twice. So I know how foot injuries can really hamper you. But, it's one of those things where, they just got to regroup. They got to regather. You still got a chance to have an extremely successful season. They, at one point, they were in the top 5, for weeks this year. So it's not like they're a different team or anything like that, or they have different players. They just got to get their team fully healthy and, be making a run by March and hopefully, they can get going in the right time. But, obviously, like I said, people don't understand how tough it is to win on the road in the Big Ten. In any college, basketball, all they see is, well, their record was 9-8. We should win that game because we're here. Well, that's just not how it works, and so, they just have to regather. They have to regroup. They got to get back. And obviously, you got all the media and all this kind of stuff flying out, that type of thing. So you just got to try to ignore it and move on and shut it all out.
Yeah, a lot of the fans, it's been well documented on social media, and as you mentioned, the media itself. But you take a look at this, Jeff, and you know the history of it with CJ's injury with the foot, as you just chronicled yourself. But I think back to the days of Bobby Hansen going through the same thing. And basketball is the wrong game to have foot problems, the way you're pounding up and down the floor. But I got to ask you this, when we take a look at the Hawks and your analytical eye as a former great player, but also as a current coach. Yes, they can work on rebounding. Yes, they can work on defense. Okay, we get that. The thing that troubles me the most, I think, or equally as much as those first two things, Jeff, is late game execution or lack thereof. Having an 11-point lead, having leads with 5 minutes and less, and letting games slip away. Is that, and I'm not trying to make more of this than it is, but I'm just asking you directly as a former great player and as a coach, is that a lack of focus? Is that just not keeping guys, as you mentioned, together or gathered? That's alarming, especially this late in the season with the veteran leadership they have. I'm just curious your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think that Fran has a lot of guys that can play. We all know that. Obviously, he does like to go deep into his bench. Some people like that. Some people don't. Obviously he's the coach of the team and he's going to do what he thinks is best. And I think sometimes as a coach, and I know exactly what he's going through, if you have a big roster and you have a lot of guys that you feel can play, well, let's give this guy a chance, or let's give this guy a chance. And so, that's, you hate to say it, but sometimes you have to use the season in order to figure out, who those guys need to be, that type of thing. And so I'm guessing that Fran is trying to figure that out. And obviously, it's no secret, he's got some younger guys that I think are probably, pretty good defenders, on-ball defenders on the perimeter, with Perkins and Ulis and Toussaint. And then you got, other guys who are probably more offensive-minded. So, what do? You're not going to go 5 minutes offense, defense, the last 5 minutes, 7 guys in and out. You might be able to do that the last minute and a half, 2 minutes, those types of things. But, it's one of those things where as a coach, I'm sure Fran's just trying to feel it out at this point. And obviously they got to get back to it. They know they're down. The toughest thing is when you lose a game or you lose 2 games, it just feels like you're still not playing well. And somehow they have to get a win, tomorrow night against Rutgers and get back on track.
Yeah, well stated as always, Jeff. Always appreciate the analysis, but also good luck to you and your team moving forward. And we'll catch up with you next week. He's Jeff Horner, former Hawkeye basketball, playing great, still at or near the top of most meaningful offensive statistical categories. Still the leader in career assists at Iowa for now. We'll see how Jordan Bohannon does with the last handful of games coming down the stretch here, Jeff. But good luck to you and the Truman State Bulldogs. 6th ranked nationally now as the Iowa Hawkeyes are 15th ranked. They didn't drop far in the rankings after losing 2 or 3 last week. Went from 8 to 15, so they're still getting that national respect. But Jeff, thank you so much as always, and I look forward to catching up with you next week, my friend.
Thanks, Dave.
You're very welcome. For Jeff Horner and James Vandenberg, as well as David Eicholt and Joe Mershman, most importantly to you, the viewers, please stay tuned for just a second as the credits roll here at the end of the show, and support my advertisers and sponsors the way they support this show, please, and thank you for that. And thanks for making us #1 in late night on Fox 28 KFXA. We greatly appreciate your support and viewership as well. So for the aforementioned guests and me, Dave O'Hara, this is Hawkeye. That's all from me. Thanks to all of you.